All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Jeff McMahon, amateur piano player. I am a watch idiot savant, and I belong to the hopeless watch addiction community. And I've been a college composition instructor full-time for close to 33 years. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about teaching college composition for close to 33 years and how we measure success in one area where we constantly fall short and a solution. All right, here we go. So collectively, an English department does something called student learning outcomes to measure the success of the English department. And typically, these student learning outcomes are divided into three categories. One is the ability to drive an argumentative claim or thesis through an entire essay, cohesively, with unity. And I have to tell you, the students are pretty smart. They catch on. Our English department typically gets 85 to 90% success in being able to, a student being able to develop an argument throughout an entire essay. The second category is typically research methods, using credible research, using signal phrases, using correct MLA in-text citations. Students are about 85% success rate with that one. We're happy with that. 85% is where we want to be. There's a third category. The third category is sentence structure and grammar. And check this out. Here we fall far short of our goals every time. Now, we're around 70%, but I'm going to tell you guys, I think we're closer to 50. I think there's some grade inflation with the grammar. The grammar is really bad. It's consistently bad. And so some people will say, hey, McMahon, just spend more time teaching grammar. Problem solved. And I got to tell you, not so simple. It's super hard to teach grammar in a college classroom. In fact, I will tell you from experience that teaching grammar most often will backfire. There are some serious obstacles to teaching grammar that I'll give you right here. So number one, even though our students are generally very smart, they can do argumentation and research methods, they come to the college classroom at about 5th grade level in grammar. They're way behind in grammar. And playing catch up with grammar, playing catch up, not ketchup, playing catch up with grammar is super hard. Grammar is long-term acquisition. It takes years to learn grammar. I didn't know that I was abysmally, woefully ignorant of grammar when I was in college, and by the time I just bought my own grammar book and taught myself grammar and then took advanced grammar, took about 5 years just to reach a level of semi-comfort with grammar. Grammar takes a long time. It's a completely different language, and that brings us to the second problem with teaching grammar. So you've got students who don't even have the language of grammar, who are at 5th grade level of their grammar, and when you start using the language of grammar, it's the equivalent of presenting Greek hieroglyphics, simultaneously giving your students a root canal. They feel so punished. The classroom is no longer a composition classroom. It's now traffic school for for getting your speeding ticket cleared. It's horrible. And the students get angry, they get passive aggressive, and they disappear psychologically. When you try to teach grammar, your students, they go into one of two places. They either go into the shame dungeon because they're ashamed that they don't know grammar, or they go into the fantasy mansion where they're just fantasizing about talking to someone that they met earlier on campus. They're fantasizing about eating a carne asada burrito after class. They're fantasizing about going to Maui, about driving a Tesla, whatever, man. And here's the thing I know about students. Once they disappear in their head, They usually do not come back. So what you have are students who can't learn grammar for another reason. You can't teach grammar in a vacuum. If you haven't spent your whole life reading, having engaged reading, you don't absorb the syntax, the sentence structure, the grammar from all the reading, which is part of the learning grammar process. A lot of my students, they're of a generation where they spent their whole lives grazing on text messages and social media sound bites. That is not conducive to grammar. They're spelling the personal pronoun I with a small I because that's how they text. The language is totally different. And so what you're dealing with is a situation that requires huge remedies, that's alienating, that makes students disappear and not come back. And so some people just say, why don't you just quit, McMahon? Why don't you just go home, quit, watch Netflix, drink warm beer, eat apple pie, give up? Because, you know, your students are just grazing on text messages, they hate grammar, they're at 5th grade level with their grammar, give up. And so, you know, I talk about this with my colleagues, and I've even talked about this recently with my colleagues, because we're very disturbed that our grammar student learning outcome is so low. Now, all other departments are probably the same. I'm sure we're in the same ballpark. So, talk to my friend and colleague at my college, Pete. Pete Marcoux is not only my colleague, he's in charge of technology for our department. And he offered me a solution. I'm going to try it next semester. The solution is technology. No more grammar lectures, no more grammar textbooks. In the place of this is an interactive website. Now the particular one I'm going to use based on Pete's recommendation is called Inquisitive. I'm going to try it. He tells me his students are making significant improvements in grammar, and it makes sense because, first of all, students don't want to be lectured to in a language they don't understand. Number two, we now have a generation of students who spend their whole lives on screens. And so having them do grammar on an interactive website on a screen is something they're comfortable with. I see this with my children. My daughters are 9 years old. They're in the 4th grade. Since the 1st grade, they've been doing homework, something called Raz Kids. They have Chromebooks. So this is part of a world that my students are very comfortable with. They're very familiar with it. They don't go into the shame dungeon when they're learning grammar in an interactive situation. So I could see how this could work. Now critics will say, come on, McMahon, this is just another capitulation of higher education to the dumbing down of America, to the gamification of culture. And you know what? There's probably some truth in that. I will concede that there's probably some truth in that. But you know, in life, sometimes you have to frame things differently. You can frame it that way if you want, but there is another way of framing it. A sort of counter argument, if you will. The other way of framing it is you have to adapt. You have to adapt to technology, you have to adapt to culture to be effective. If you don't adapt, you're a dinosaur and you die, you're extinct. So I'm going to make this adaptation. I'm going to adopt this inquisitive. I'll let you know how it goes. But I feel this is a huge step. Tell me what you think of this, ladies and gentlemen. We are transitioning in the classroom from grammar textbooks and grammar lectures to interaction on screens. That's where we're at. All right, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, I'm out.